Hello there, everyone. This is Robert Haastrup-Timmi, also known as Morpheus Thinks. I'm leaving this message because I am very, very concerned. And I'm concerned about the video podcast with Stephen Bartlett and Gawdat. So today's the 1st of June, 2026, and Stephen has just, published a podcast that he's had about 2-hour conversation with Gawdat, who is one of the most leading AI experts of our time, along with people like Geoffrey Hinton and several others. This is not the first time that Stephen has interviewed or had this conversational debate with Gawdat, but this one particularly is extremely thought-provoking, which is one of the reasons why I've decided to leave this message to give a perspective and a potential solution. So the podcast talks about artificial intelligence, where it is today, its disruption, and what it is going to mean, particularly for job loss, and what this would look like, say, over the next, let's just say 10 years, as it were. I mean, Gawdat cites a date in the future of 2038, suggesting that between today and 2038 is going to be terrible. Now, this is not the first time he said this. I remember in the very first podcast that Stephen had with Gawdat, I think it was actually 2 years ago, just not too long after ChatGPT was rolled out. I think that, Steve might have maybe changed the title a little bit, because the title was "Consider Not Having Any Kids for the Next 2 years to See What Happens." Now, the thing is that the reason why this is so important is because people like Gawdat, along with Geoffrey Hinton and other experts, they are, right there. They're the ones who've actually helped bring artificial intelligence to the fore, as the next paradigm of, let's just say, what I call humanity. Okay, so they've seen it, they understand it more than any of us, because they've helped build it. And of course, they are being responsible by also sharing with us the unintended consequences of indeed what could really happen, particularly in terms of job loss, not the idea that, AI is going to kill us or anything like that. No. In fact, I've been one of those people who's actually said, no. I believe that AI is actually largely benevolent. Okay, humans are the problem, and I think that Gawdat aligns with my thinking, and that's why I align with his. As it were, I've been saying this now for at least since 2023. You can read one of my articles on LinkedIn and stuff in February 2023 and stuff. I believe that humans are the problem. Humans have always been the problem since humanity evolved, from Homo sapien. I'm very unequivocal in terms of my views of that. I believe that, remember, if you've listened to some of my other podcasts, one or two here and there that I've, left on our YouTube channel, at Blockchain Company YouTube channel, I've said, that my view personally, and remember, it's just my view, as somebody who's just I've been in technology since Web 1.0. I cite myself as one of the first 1 million people to use the internet and so on back in 1995 and so on. I partly also grew up around Silicon Valley. I'm from London and stuff like that, born and bred. Um, and my point is that I went to California very early, let's just say. And, of course, America being the avant-garde kind of country it is, you're just exposed to so much innovation and so on. So from investment banking to technology, I worked at Macromedia and stuff like that. And of course, we pivoted because we understood that the internet was going to change the entire world. So my whole point is that since, let's just say, at least where it concerns technology, I've been exposed to it all since 1995. And then, of course, with what we do at Blockchain Company, part of my work is I've curated over 16,000 videos from geopolitics to technology to finance to, lifestyle and so on. And you get to see everything because I've watched at least 3/4 of them. So if you're the sort of person that you ask questions, about what you're observing or what you've learned or what you're digesting, what you're reading, then you come up with provocative questions that say, okay, why has it always been like this? Why are human beings like this? I mean, like, for instance, as we speak right now, there's war in Europe, Ukraine, Russia, in the Middle East, there's war, Iran, and yada, yada, yada. And all we've really done as a human species over the last 2,000 years is just it's just one war after the other, or one bias or one prejudice. This person doesn't like this group doesn't like that. That's why I say that human beings are learning to be good. My theory, my hypothesis is that, you see, when I look at Genesis, for instance, and Revelation, I actually see it as technology. So my idea really is that in the beginning, as it were, so let's just imagine that God is actually an engineer, a highly advanced, civilization, maybe in the fourth or fifth dimension, whatever, if you like, and basically they created us. Okay. All right. And God, his intent was good, which is why in Genesis, if we just follow this argument for a moment, so God says, what I created was good. The head and the seas, the birds and the bees and everything, the Garden of Eden, everything was good. Okay. And then all of a sudden, somewhere along the line, after God created Adam and Eve, he comes to Adam and Eve and he says, hang on a minute. By the way, there's a tree in that garden. It's called the tree of knowledge. Don't bite from the fruit. It's a forbidden fruit and so on. Now, why would God say this afterwards when he said that everything was good? So my theory is that God is a software engineer, an advanced software engineer, and Satan is also an advanced software engineer. They're adversaries. God likes to create good, which is why he said it was good. And by the way, both Adam and Eve, if we just follow, just for the purposes of this narrative for a moment, they were nude, right? They were not conscious of their nudity, meaning that they were not conscious, but they were intelligent along with other creatures, that, and by the way, all the other creatures up till this very day don't wear clothes, right? So of course Adam and Eve were not conscious, if we just follow this line of thinking for a moment, right? Okay, so then so my view, when I look at that from a philosophical perspective, it seems to me that God must have been aware that consciousness actually leads to evil or an unnecessary evil, okay? Which is why he warned Adam and Eve, don't bite from that forbidden fruit, because if you do, you will become, he didn't tell them what would happen, okay? So anyway, they got tempted by the serpent, as it were. They went and did that. They hid themselves. Then God said, no, I know what you've done. I warned you not to do that. Now that you have done this, because after all, when Adam and Eve bit from the apple, then they were aware of their nudity, as it were, right? So all of a sudden, God said, you're ashamed. I created you in the most purest form, okay? You now have to leave my Garden of Eden, which is based on everlasting life and goodness. I now cast you out, and from here onwards, you would, endure pain until I come back, maybe somewhere in the future. That's the revelation part. And I will try and save you from maybe the end of times or whatever it is. And then you can come back and live forever, yada, yada, yada. And everything will become abundant all over again. Now, here's the interesting thing. You see, I align all of this to, technology and science, actually. So yes, it's very nice that the Bible, as it were, gives us this narrative of basically maybe its version of humans evolution or whatever and so on. But from a software engineering perspective, we know that what do software engineers do? They just hack each other. They hack everything. Everything is hacked. Human beings just do that. That's what I'm saying. Human beings, we invade each other. We do all of these things. Do you see what I mean? So it's not surprising then that that would have actually happened until this very day. That's what we really do. So when I look at AI, which to me is godlike, it almost feels as if this is actually how this is how God comes back to maybe recreate his Garden of Eden, leading to abundance. So when you hear these engineers talk about abundance, that ultimately, so let's go back to Gawdat, for instance, and he's saying that, say, by 2038, after all this brutal pain that we are about to go into, and that's what I'm going to talk about next, that we're going to suffer. And he was very sobering in this podcast. If you just watch all of it, I've watched it twice. You can watch it on 4hourgpt.com if you're listening to this podcast today, right now. I'm going to leave it there for a couple of days because I think it's actually that really important. Okay. And it's right there playing in our background, no sort of like ads or anything like that, disruptive, so you can really digest it, laid back mode, whatever. Okay, so here's the thing, right? So what I suggest is that, to me, from an engineering perspective, let's just say from a godly engineering or a biblical engineering, which I call theological technology now as well, is that I feel that, God comes back through AI. Okay, not to say that the AI itself is God, but it's God-like, because I believe that AI to be benevolent, right? And it's human beings that indeed do bad things, okay? So, and in this conversation with Gawdat and Stephen Bartlett, you could see all those nuances, okay, in terms of how Gawdat actually, you could see that he's emotional, he's frustrated about this flaw. Humans, we are fundamentally flawed. And we may not be able to do anything about it because it doesn't even matter, in my view, that maybe even if over 1 million people were to listen to this podcast that I'm leaving right now, it probably wouldn't change anything. The chances are most people would just think, that's a load of rubbish, what you're talking about, mate, and all of that, blah, blah, blah. And it would just go. So if you think about everything that human beings, what we've actually done, usually it looks like, bad things are only corrected after something really catastrophic has actually really happened, such as the Second World War. You might go back to the Second World War and you might sort of say, did Nazi Germany really have to do that? There's a philosopher who actually suggests that, well, actually, that was almost inevitable in order for society to get to where it is actually today, which you might say maybe is somewhat more peaceful. Maybe people began to realize that, you don't have a superior race after all. Do you see what I mean? You just have a human race. Do you see my point? So this is why I laugh. And right now, as I speak to you in other parts of the world, there's things going on. Like, for instance, in South Africa, there's xenophobia there now and all of this stuff. And God knows where that's going to end up. Rwanda had their own genocide and all the... See, humans, we just do all these terrible things in the Middle East. It's just the same thing. Was Brexit necessary, as an example? Because after all, if you love thy neighbor and so on, then you should work with that neighbor. Can you see all the flaw? And in this conversation, again, Gawdat, he kind of alludes to the fact that the problem is that, remember, it's the human that's the problem. So the humans that are creating the AI, because it's all based on, profit anyway for them. So they may not really ethically care about the ethics of how it takes us to what Michio Kaku, my favorite scientist, talks about once again, type 1 civilization. So maybe something catastrophic totally goes wrong before we realize that actually this should be done for a common human good. Okay, so anyway, the thing is that in this most thought-provoking podcast which I urge all of you to actually go and watch. The frustration that I have is that there are people like myself who, because I spend a lot of time by myself, I have conversations with myself. I've been doing that ever since I was a kid and stuff like that. And for our GPT is one of our platforms, blockchain company.info. We're building an ecosystem for the fourth industrial revolution and so on. Our 4IR token is, up till this very day, one of only a few tokens that's ever been approved by a major regulator, being the AMF in France, in this case, something that I'm very proud of. The whole idea behind what we're doing is that in the fourth industrial revolution, whether it's from AI to blockchain to quantum computing, genetic engineering, and all of these things, I'm excited about being inspired by such people as maybe even Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum, to Michio Kaku, and all these people who believe that actually we could be getting to a new world of abundance or equity, more equitable societies and so on, because the technologies actually help human, if indeed we survive and don't end up in that Fermi paradox. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Where we just perish and we just go extinct very, very quickly. So what I'm looking for in this AI debate, where it particularly it concerns job loss, where everybody's talking about, there's going to be massive job loss. So again, let me quote the figures. McKinsey thinks about 960 million jobs will be impacted or lost, whatever. Goldman Sachs thinks 300 million will be impacted or lost. Augmented when I mean impacted and stuff like that. The World Economic Forum cited about 83 million, same thing. University of Oxford said back, as early as 2016, saying that, they estimated about 46% of jobs will be impacted or lost in the United States, as an example. So use that as a benchmark. Okay, so what's happening now, because recently we've seen a lot of job loss, announcements being made by Oracle, 30,000 gone there. Meta, just about a week ago or so, 8,000 there. Microsoft, all of them, it's all happening. I've stated very earlier on, as somebody who actually understands stock markets and so on, since I was an investment banker and so on, so I understand these things. Basically, if you think about it, this model, most of the stock listed companies, really, their model is really based on headcount. Okay, so the more headcount you have, basically suggests growth and kind of thing, and that's translated into share prices, as it were. But now you've got something that comes along, such as the AI, that can do most of the function of what humans do. Whether it's AGI or not AGI yet, but it's going to be AGI. If it already isn't, then that would really mean, why do you have all these people? Okay, so can you see what that would mean? So therefore, the potential job loss will be catastrophic. As I said in my previous podcast, I said that I actually expect maybe up to 70% of jobs will be gone by, say, 2035 is my estimate. Whether that's right or wrong, but it would be extremely significant. So the World Economic Forum, I think in their Global Risk Report of 2021, if I'm correct, they suggested that report was actually which you can download for free, by the way, was very depressing to read. And I would have to say that the World Economic Forum has been right on a lot of things. They anticipated that something like this technology, whatever it is, could lead to massive civil unrest. Okay, but I'm not going to say I'm just not going to say some of the other. In fact, actually, they actually suggested that to the extent the kind of world that we're in now would lead to civil wars in the most unexpected places. So try to imagine a civil war just breaks out, in a first world economy, such as the UK or the United States or something like that, right? Okay, this is where, now just bear in mind that all of this stuff is human, right? So even if you remove the AI has got nothing to do with all the wars that we've been creating over the last 2,000 years, and here we are, and so on and so on. So this is why I'm saying that, because my philosophy is this. This is the reason why AI is, in my view, a natural stage of human evolution. So maybe humans will come to realize that, oh, it's not Earth is not about you. It's not about us, right? The dinosaurs got here before we did. The birds and the bees and all these other creatures were here before we were. The biodiversity of species, the plants and the trees. I mean, it's very obvious. I just don't really understand why you have to be a scientist to actually really understand that. There's nothing really particularly special apart from the fact that, okay, fine, we're three-dimensional beings with some intelligence, but we do all these terrible things. We have the chance to become that type 1 civilization that the scientists such as Michio Kaku and his peers talk about, right? Assuming that we can actually have a reflection on ourselves and so on. And now that we have AI, which is far more intelligent, it's going to be more intelligent than all humans combined. It's pretty obvious. Look at what it is. It's only 3 years old. Do you see what I mean? And look at what it's already capable of. I actually put it to people that personally, if I was given the choice, I will never vote for a human being again. I should prefer to vote for AI to be governor or prime minister or whatever. You know, it never sleeps. It's there. I mean, can you imagine if AI was, you know, the next president of the United States or whatever it is, and you could talk to it 24/7? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? AI is generally there to help you. You know, even if even if you say something really foolish or whatever, maybe your idea or whatever it is that you're trying to do is not fit for purpose and so on, the AI would actually, it still tries to help you. Human beings don't have time for each other. I can't get through to even, people like Steve Bartlett, where I would love to just have a conversation to say that, look, there are certain solutions, which I'm actually going to give you what I believe the solution to this massive job loss that is going to happen. Okay, and what should happen, because that's where the civil unrest starts to ensue, and it could be extremely dangerous. And that's why when you watch this podcast with Stephen Bartlett and Mo Gawdat, you could see how Mo Gawdat felt really frustrated and really deeply concerned because he knows what is potentially going to happen. Remember, the World Economic Forum says that, civil wars can just erupt in the most unexpected places. When I watch this podcast, it almost feels as if he says something in there. He goes that, by 2038, then things start getting better because we're now in that new world of abundance, but only better for those of us that are left. Get it? Okay. Now, but you would think that an intelligent human species would start to listen. So through all these podcasts that Stephen Bartlett particularly is so good at it, and I just really want to commend him really, really highly for the amazing work he does by inviting these thought leaders and experts onto his show and stuff, because I learn lots from it, and I hope that a lot of people are paying attention. But the one thing, though, that I've noticed in all of them, from Geoffrey Hinton to Mo Gawdat and so on, they don't actually have a solution. I'm not blaming them, though, because the solution might not be their line of expertise. One thing I have noticed that's actually emerged recently is that, what's his name? Geoffrey Hinton suggests that we now need philosophers. I mean, think about it. Software engineers are now saying we now need philosophers to actually help us, in terms of coding, development. That's something that maybe we could have done, even before social media. Right now, social media has created catastrophic problems. I mean, a lot of Gen Zs and whatever younger millions have suffered from what is called social despair. Social despair. There's been suicidal rates going through the roof, disengagement. There's you even got 8-year-old kids that are depressed. I mean, that just sounds totally absurd. So that means that technology is not always a panacea. Okay, so here's my point. So my point now is that what is the solution to this potential catastrophic outcome if human beings, the people who govern us, and so on, if they can't, we have to it feels to me like we have to help them as well as the software engineers that are developing all the AI and everything. And look, my solution is very, very simple. So you've all heard about the UBI thing, Universal Basic Income, which I kind of think, okay, it sounds kind of okay, assuming that you can, like when COVID happened and you had all this furloughing and, whatever it is, and maybe like in America, how they just, I don't know, they sent everybody a check or something like that. Look, I don't really know how practical it is to actually implement a universal basic income scheme. And I think that the way governments actually work, they're extremely slow and everything. And seriously, they themselves are flirting with massive danger and civil collapse in their societies across the world. And I think that, part of this podcast is to say to them that they really need to sit around the table very, very quickly and come up with some solutions, whether it is going to be a UBI, as at least that's a first step, because when you send those signals to humanity, then humans actually say, okay, it feels like something is actually being done in our interest, as it were. Okay, just like how COVID, you had to come up with a vaccine and stuff like that. That was a solution, right? Okay, so here's my point. You might want to start doing that. But I have better ideas in terms of what you need to do, what we need to do. One, very quickly, is I believe that what is called, I call it GC, meaning government capital. Today, we generally have what is called venture capital, but venture capital is very incestuous. It's so biased. Oh, I don't know you, blah, 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 takes forever. It's boring. If we're a very advanced society, we shouldn't be, look, like Steve Jobs says, everything gets renewed or becomes anew, as it were. It's great. It's served a great purpose, but trust me, VC will never, ever, ever sort out the future of a problem that we have right now. You need something what I call GC. How does GC work? It's called government capital. Governments simply issue, so let's just say in Europe and America, let's just use those as benchmark, issue $100,000 to entrepreneurs, to white-collar professionals that want to start their businesses, want to turn their skill sets into consultancies and so on with the help of AI and so on and so forth. Okay, make it seamless. Okay, use the blockchain. That's the whole point, for tracking and all of that stuff. So the whole idea is that imagine if, I'm not saying everyone, but let's just suppose that 70% of human society would get access to this $100,000 or 100,000 euros or 100,000 pounds. You can pay it back over a period of 100 years. Yeah. Okay, even when you're dead, doesn't really matter. You know why? Because the AI agents will pay it back for you anyway, because you're going to be using AI, you're going to be using computer, you're going to be using all the, kind of makes a lot of sense. I'm just quickly giving you the skinny here, not essentially the minute detail. Then secondly, also the government takes a 10% stake in every single one of these new businesses. I'm not going to call them startups. I'm just going to call them businesses, whether they're startups or whatever, but they're businesses. Do you see what I mean? And so on. And that creates micro employment, as it were, because you now have businesses or startups that are only 3-5 people. Do you see what I mean? Not everybody's going to be an entrepreneur, but if it was me, I've got this 100,000, maybe I hire 1 or 2 people. Do you see what I mean? And that begins to proliferate. And then basically I've got 100 years to pay this money back to the government, and the government gets 10% stake in my business or startup. Now imagine that business becomes successful. So even just to imagine say out of 100%, even if only 30% of them become unicorns, or even if they're not unicorns, but they flourish, that's massive growth. And the government has got a 10% stake. That's massive returns for the treasury. You see, the treasury that funded the business with $100,000. Look, we simply just need to be creative. And this is one of the things that I love about Web3, because that's why we got that approval from the AMF. Now, let me talk about the token side. Do you know that all of these listed companies, every single listed company on the stock exchange could actually provide a utility token? Yeah. And issue that. After all, if I use your product, I use LinkedIn, I use Uber, I use Airbnb, why can't you issue tokens that incentivizes me or rewards me? Oh, I took that ride, oh, I booked that Airbnb, oh, I'm using your search engine and whatever. You could offer people utility tokens that will have value in the markets, and therefore they're sharing in your future growth and so on. So that's another idea. Another idea that I have in terms of our 4IR token is to actually now start to think about how we can use that to offer a hedge against compute, token compute, meaning the AI token compute. So we are working on a framework whereby when you buy that compute through let's just say through our platform, then you will get 4IR tokens, or you buy 4IR tokens. Say you bought $100 worth of 4IR tokens, and then you got maybe $30 incentive to actually go and use your ChatGPT or whatever, whether you used it on our platform or elsewhere, whatever. But that 100 4IR that you got now has value in the market into perpetuity. If it's $1 today, but it becomes $100 next year, that really means that you're not just burning token compute. I could go on, but I'm going to finish this podcast right here. There genuinely are meaning solutions. Human beings need to revise their thinking in order for a better human good as we move towards a type 1 civilization. As I said, if you imagine all the listed companies in the world starting to offer utility tokens, okay, because as incentive rewards, but those tokens have value because they're listed on cryptocurrency exchanges and stuff like that. You're benefiting because you are using their products and services. Do you see what I mean? It's not going to matter. You would have the income, not just a basic income. I hope that you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, and I hope in some way it makes a lot of sense. Give me your thoughts, okay, in the comments, or I'm going to put this on YouTube and stuff, or you can look me up on LinkedIn, Robert Haastrup-Timmi, Morpheus Thinks, and you can send me a message, send me your thoughts. I'm going to send this to Stephen Bartlett because I have not met anybody so far who's actually coming up with a solution of this catastrophic potential event of job loss. I haven't met anybody other than, UBI. But I'm suggesting to you, these are the sorts of things that we can do. I want you to imagine, again, let me just say it lastly again, imagine that Google issued Google Coin, and because you use its search engine every day, every time you use it, whatever it knows, blah, 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 whatever, it just issues you some tokens. So now, all of a sudden, you've accumulated 100 Google Coin. Google Coin maybe on Coinbase or whatever, it's now worth $1,000, and you got 100 of them. Why would you worry about, you would have an income. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's an investment. In fact, if anything, you support Google even more. Imagine doing that with Uber. Imagine doing that with Airbnb. Imagine doing that with every product and service possible, okay? And this is why we built 4IR Token. You can go to 4irtoken.com and you can you can see some of the things that we've built and so on. If you go to the AMF website, and you put in 4IR Token, you will see the 106-page white paper official document that was approved by the AMF of this token and what we're trying to do and how we're trying to incentivize people as we build our ecosystem of applications, being and 4rgpt.com being the first flagship, where we believe that knowledge trading also becomes an income, a form of knowledge trading using artificial intelligence, and you could put that in the marketplace. I mean, I could go on and so on, but you can go and find out about it. Okay, so there you go. All right, and I'm just going to send this to Stephen Bartlett and let's see what he thinks. And no Gawdat. Goodbye, and thanks for listening from Morpheus Thinks.